Good morning, everyone. I'm sure as you all are well aware of today, this is the anniversary of the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks in New York City, Washington, D.C., and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. I have never actually done this before on the anniversary of 9/11, but I will be sharing with you all my story from that particular day. I must caution you if I sound a little, what's the word I'm looking for? Little uneasy or kind of sketchy on the details, it's because you have to understand, for some of us, this happened when we were third graders or some elementary schoolish type grades. And I also know in my family, we've had a personal connection to 9/11 ourselves because my mom, she says she lost people who were in the World Trade Center towers, and she knows of someone who lost someone who was on the third hijacked airplane that flew into the Pentagon. So, without further ado, here's my story from 9/11. 14 years ago today, I was a third grader at Westtown Thornberry Elementary School. At some point during that morning, our principal, Mr. Grimm, had come on the PA system to let the whole school know that something bad has happened, but we are alright. Your parents will tell you what happened when you get home, and that we would be having indoor recess. As a kid, I was used to our elementary school telling us days where we couldn't go outside because it was, let's say, too rainy or too hot, cold, etc. So on days where we couldn't play outside because of the weather. But little did I know, we would wind up having good reasons for being indoors on what was a clear, beautiful late summer morning. When I got home that afternoon, because we were held to our normal dismissal times that day, and this question I later learned from one of my parents, my grandmom told me that 4 airplanes crashed today. So I turned on the news, and with my grandmom with me, there they were showing the scenes of devastation out of New York City, Washington, D.C., and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. To this day, I commend everyone for what they did on that particular day. Our teachers and staff at Westtown Thornberry for not telling us the whole truth, but kind of leaving it as like something bad had happened, but we were fine, and that our parents were going to tell us what happened. My mom, dad, and grandmom for not just sticking around with me whenever I would watch the coverage, but trying to answer their questions to a point, and because they would later wind up telling me the truth when I got older about what happened on this particular day. And in some cases, I remembered that I wouldn't see much of, or in some cases, none of the coverage on these attacks. Mrs. Bush, for telling people like my mom, dad, and grandmom to not let young children like myself at that time watch replays of these airliners flying into buildings, the towers collapsing, etc., and for Lynn Joel for coming up with a very interesting book that helped us deal with the events of that awful day, Brave Mole. You all may have remembered last year I mentioned a book that came out following the attacks called Brave Mole, which told the story about a mole who worked to save others when dragons attacked the tallest molehills in the forest. As I got older, and all these wild and crazy and almost Hollywood-like type movies came out about 9/11, I then realized This was no Hollywood movie. This was not an accident. And this was certainly not one of those normal days. And that everyone thought very well to not let young children like myself know the whole truth about what happened on that particular day. Which, as we all know, 19 terrorists boarded 4 commercial airliners that were on routine flights out of Boston, Washington, D.C., and Newark, New Jersey. They crashed 2 airplanes into each of the twin towers of the World Trade Center, causing both of them to collapse within an hour and 42 minutes. They also flew a 3rd airplane into the Pentagon, and a 4th one that was initially steered towards Washington, D.C., and according to investigators, that would have nearly gone into the Capitol building. But it crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, when the passengers fought back against the hijackers. My thoughts and prayers are with everyone who lost their lives 14 years ago today. All the families of those who were on board all 4 commercial airliners, which were American Airlines Flight 11, American Airlines Flight 77, United 93, and United 175. All those who died in the World Trade Center, all the members of New York City's emergency responders, such as the Fire Department of New York, the New York Police Department, the Port Authority's Police Department, EMTs, and people who tried to do everything they could to get those people out of the towers before they collapsed. Everyone who died when Flight 77 slammed into the Pentagon, including the military personnel who tried to do what they could to get out of the Pentagon. Everyone who successfully revolted against the hijackers on United 93, and most importantly, everyone who served in the military and was fighting the war on terror. God bless America. 9/11, a day we will never forget.